Hey there, I'm Frank Thompson. I'm 68 years old, retired now, but I spent most of my life working in construction, building homes and fixing things. I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa, just a small town where everyone knows everyone. I've been married to Linda for 42 years. We've got 2 kids, grown now, living their own lives. It's quiet here mostly. I can't say things are as busy as they once were, but I reckon I'm all right with that. I've got my garden, my books, and some good memories. But not too long ago, something happened in my life that completely changed my perspective. It shook me to the core. Something that happened right under my own roof. I can still feel the weight of it when I think back on it. And I want to share it with you. Because maybe, just maybe, it'll help someone else out there who's going through something similar. Take a breath. What I'm about to tell you isn't easy, but it's something that happened to me, and it's important to understand. I never thought this would be my story, but here it is, for better or worse. Before we get into it, do me a favor. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the rest, and if you can, drop a comment. I'm always curious to hear where folks are watching from and what time it is. And if you've ever been through something like this, family conflict, betrayal, I think this might help you too. Like I said, things had been quiet in our lives. Linda and we'd settled into a routine. She'd get up early, make us coffee, and we'd sit together at the kitchen table, just talking about whatever came to mind. Sometimes about the kids, sometimes about the garden or the weather. Nothing big. That's how life was in our house, and I couldn't complain. We were comfortable, There wasn't a lot of excitement, but I think we were happy. Or at least, I thought we were. I'm sure I'm not the only one who gets used to the little things, the routine. It just felt like the way life was supposed to be. Every day, the same rhythm. The mornings were peaceful. I'd take a walk down by the river, come back for lunch, and we'd talk about what we were having for dinner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours, and I thought that was enough. What more could we want at our age? But then one evening, it must have been a Thursday or so, she said something that threw me off. It wasn't anything major, not at first. She just said, "Frank, I need one night alone. Just one night to think." And I don't know why, but that hit me harder than I expected. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, trying to make sense of it. Linda had always been the one to fuss over everything, always making sure everyone else was happy. So for her to ask for a night to herself, it felt strange, even a little out of character. I told her, "All right, I'll give you the space." But inside, I started feeling like something wasn't right. Something wasn't adding up. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than she was telling me. And it nagged at me, all through that night, and the next morning, and the morning after that. It was small things at first. Linda wasn't talking much. Not about her day, not about what she was doing, not even about the things she usually enjoyed. She would sit at the kitchen table, staring out the window like she was lost in thought. I asked her what was on her mind, but she just smiled and told me she was tired. She said she didn't feel like doing anything that day, which wasn't like her. She'd always been active, making plans, organizing things, always on the go. I tried not to worry. I mean, we're both getting older, right? Maybe she was just burnt out, but there was something about the way she said it that made me uneasy. It wasn't just exhaustion. There was a distance in her voice, like she was holding something back from me. But I didn't push her. I let it slide, maybe more than I should have. I remember that afternoon I went out to mow the lawn. I usually do it every Sunday, but that day I did it early. It's funny how you notice the little things when you're thinking too much. I looked over at Linda sitting in the living room, her eyes fixed on the same spot. She didn't even notice me watching her. And that's when it hit me. Something was different. Something was off. I couldn't shake it, that nagging feeling. The thought kept turning over in my head. Why would she want a night alone? It didn't make sense. She never asked for time away from me before. Not like that. It felt like there was something else, something she wasn't telling me. The next night, it happened again. We had dinner like usual, but this time she said it a little more firmly. "Frank," she said, "I really need one night alone, just to clear my head. Please." There was a softness to her voice, but also a finality. I couldn't argue. She wasn't asking for a vacation or a trip to see family. Just one night to herself. I agreed, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. I thought maybe she just needed some space. I thought maybe I was overthinking things. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. I wasn't blind to the changes, the quiet moments when she would look away from me, almost like she was somewhere else entirely, somewhere I couldn't reach. Something was pulling her away from me, and I had no idea what it was. That night, as she prepared for bed, I decided to give her the space she asked for, but I couldn't let it go. Not really. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just needing a little alone time. So, against my better judgment, I made a decision. I would follow her. I didn't know where she was going or what she was up to, but I couldn't ignore that feeling in my gut. Something was wrong, and I wasn't going to just sit back and let it happen under my roof without understanding why. The next evening, we sat down for dinner, just like always. It was nothing fancy. A pot roast, green beans, mashed potatoes. We had our usual conversation, what the kids were up to, how the weather was supposed to turn the next day. But there was a hollowness to it that I couldn't shake. Linda wasn't the same, and it wasn't just the quietness I'd been noticing. She was there, but she wasn't. Her mind was somewhere else, far away from the table, from me. We'd been married for over 40 years, and I thought I knew everything about her, or at least I thought I did. But as she picked at her food, barely tasting it, I started to wonder if I really did. Something in her eyes told me that she was thinking about something, or someone else. I tried talking to her about it, asking if something was bothering her, but she just shrugged it off, said she was tired, just like before. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the more she acted this way, the more uneasy I became. She looked at me that night, and for the first time, I felt like a stranger. She was looking at me like she didn't really see me, like I was just another part of the scenery. I don't know if it was the way she chewed her food, or how she kept fidgeting with her napkin, but it was clear to me that something wasn't right. At one point, she stood up to clear the dishes, and I just sat there watching her. She didn't meet my eyes. She didn't even smile when I said, "Thank you for dinner. It was good." Her lips barely moved, like she was somewhere else, and in that moment, I felt like I was losing her. I didn't know how or why, but I knew I was. That night, after she went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning it over in my mind, what she said, how she acted. I kept wondering if I was overreacting. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe she just needed some time to herself. After all, we weren't kids anymore. People change. but deep down, I knew there was more to it. I could feel it. I spent hours thinking about it, trying to push it out of my mind, but it stayed with me like a weight I couldn't shake. Eventually, I made up my mind. I was going to follow her. I didn't know where she was going or what she was up to, but I knew I couldn't let it slide. Not this time. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to. It wasn't about controlling her or invading her privacy. It was about trust, or more accurately, the lack of it. I knew something was wrong and I had to know the truth. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it, but I was going to find out, no matter what. So I waited until she fell asleep. I didn't want to wake her up. I didn't want her to know what I was doing. I couldn't explain it to her. Not yet. But I had to know. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my coat, and quietly left the house. I got into the car and started driving. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I had to follow her. I thought maybe she was just going to the store, or maybe she had a friend she needed to see. But something told me it wasn't that simple. Not anymore. Something in my gut told me I was walking into a situation I wasn't prepared for. I drove slowly through town, keeping my distance. I didn't want her to notice me. I didn't want her to know I was following her. The streets were empty that night, like a ghost town. It was past 9, and the only sound was the hum of my car engine as I made my way down familiar roads. Cedar Falls was small, quiet, and not a whole lot happened here at night. So, when Linda turned left, onto a road I didn't recognize, my heart skipped a beat. I followed her for miles, trying to keep my distance, trying not to be obvious. She wasn't headed to the usual places, like the grocery store or the library. No, this was different. I could see her car turning off onto side streets, winding deeper into town. It was almost like she didn't want anyone to see her. That's when the questions started coming faster than I could answer them. Why was she doing this? Where was she going? And who was she seeing? I tried to shake it off, but my hands were gripping the steering wheel too tight. I felt like I was losing control. I couldn't stop myself, though. I had to keep going, even though every part of me wanted to turn around and go back home. Eventually, she stopped at a small, old house near the edge of town. It wasn't somewhere I'd ever been. It wasn't one of our neighbors, and I had no idea who lived there. I sat in my car across the street, watching. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but the moment she got out of the car and walked up to the door, my stomach dropped. A man opened the door. He didn't look like anyone I knew. He stepped out onto the porch, and they hugged. A long hug. Not just a quick, friendly hug, but a tight, intimate one. And in that moment, I felt like everything I knew about my life had shattered. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in the car, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I wasn't sure what I was seeing, but I knew what it meant. This wasn't just a friend. This wasn't just a simple night out. I watched them stand there, talking for a while, then go inside together. I don't know how long I sat there after that. It could have been minutes or hours. But what I did know was this. Linda, my wife of over 40 years, was with another man. Not just a stranger. A man she knew. And not only did she know him, she was comfortable with him. Too comfortable. I sat there, frozen, staring at the house. I could feel the anger start to build in my chest, the heat rising in my face. But there was something else too. Something darker. It wasn't just anger. It was betrayal. It was something I had never expected to feel from her, not from Linda. She had always been my rock, the person who stood by me through everything. And yet, here I was, watching her walk into a house with another man. I didn't know what to do with the anger, the hurt, or the confusion, but I knew I couldn't sit there forever. I had to get out of that car. I had to do something. But what? I wasn't sure if I was ready to confront her. I wasn't sure if I could even look her in the eyes after what I'd seen. But I knew I couldn't just ignore it either. I had to find out what was going on, even if it tore me apart to do it. I stayed in my car for what felt like hours. I watched the house, watched the lights flicker on inside. I don't know why, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. It was like I was waiting for something that would make sense of all of this. But nothing came. There were no signs, no sudden revelation that would explain this away. All I saw was Linda and that man inside that house. I watched them move from the porch to the living room, the door closing behind them. I could see the shadows shifting through the curtains, the way they moved together. I sat there, my hands gripping the steering wheel, my mind a jumbled mess. What was I supposed to do now? I had seen enough. I knew what was happening. I didn't need to see any more. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I wanted to go in there. I wanted to confront them both, to storm in and demand answers. But something stopped me. I don't know if it was fear or doubt, but I stayed there, staring at that house, frozen in place. I think I was waiting for her to come out, for her to come back to me, like she always had. But that didn't happen. All I could hear was the quiet hum of the engine, the tick of the clock on the dashboard, the thudding of my own heartbeat. It felt like I was suffocating in my own thoughts. Every minute that passed made it harder to breathe. The weight of what I knew was pressing down on me, and I couldn't escape it. But eventually, I saw a light flicker in the house. The door opened and Linda stepped outside, alone. She didn't look back. She didn't even glance over her shoulder. And then, just like that, she got into her car and drove off. And for a moment, I thought about leaving, about getting out of there and pretending I hadn't seen anything. But I couldn't. I drove home in a daze. I didn't know what I was feeling. It was a mix of anger, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite name. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. It was as if the whole world had changed in that instant, and nothing would ever be the same again. When I walked in the door, the house was quiet, too quiet. The usual sounds of Linda moving around, the hum of the TV, the soft clink of dishes. It was all gone. She was sitting in the living room, her eyes fixed on the TV, but she didn't even look at me when I came in. It was like I wasn't even there. I stood in the doorway, just looking at her. She didn't acknowledge me, didn't say a word. The silence between us was deafening. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I just stood there, paralyzed. I had so many questions, so many things I wanted to say, but all I could do was stare at her, wondering how we had come to this point. Finally, she turned to me, as if she could feel my eyes on her. "You're back early," she said, her voice flat. But I could hear it, the hesitation, the fear hiding underneath her words. I wasn't sure if she knew I knew, but I was sure she could feel the distance growing between us. I didn't answer her. I just nodded and walked past her, heading into the kitchen. I couldn't look at her anymore. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face her, to confront her. But I knew I would have to. It wasn't going to stay quiet for long. I couldn't let it. The next few hours felt like days. I couldn't stop thinking about everything I had seen. My mind kept replaying the scene. Linda with that man. The way they hugged. The way they looked at each other. It wasn't just a friendly visit. It was something else. And I couldn't pretend anymore that everything was fine. I walked around the house aimlessly, trying to distract myself, but nothing worked. The anger started building inside me. I could feel it bubbling up, threatening to spill over. I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't talk to Linda yet. I needed answers. I needed the truth. Finally, around midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked into the living room where Linda was sitting, still staring at the TV, as if everything was normal. But nothing was normal. I stood in front of her, my heart pounding in my chest. She looked up at me, but there was a flash of fear in her eyes, like she knew what was coming. And I knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. "Who is he, Linda?" I asked. My voice was steady, but my insides were twisting. I wasn't sure what I expected her to say, but it didn't matter. I needed the truth. She didn't answer me at first. She just stared at me, her lips trembling. And for a moment, I thought she was going to deny it, to tell me I was wrong, that I was imagining things. But then she spoke, and what she said hit me harder than anything else had. "He's someone from my past," she said quietly. "Someone I used to know. I didn't mean for this to happen, Frank. I never wanted to hurt you." I don't know what I was expecting her to say, but hearing those words, it shattered me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I don't know how long we sat there in silence. It felt like an eternity. Every word she said felt like a knife to the chest, and I couldn't stop the pain. She had been seeing someone else, someone from her past, and the betrayal felt like it was suffocating me. But I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I didn't say the things I wanted to say. Maybe it was because I didn't know what to do with the pain. Maybe it was because I didn't want to make things worse. But for whatever reason, I kept my voice low. I kept my anger in check. And I just listened. I listened to her try to explain, even though I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear about how she lost herself or how she needed someone to talk to. I didn't want to hear any of it, but I knew I had to. I had to understand. I had to know what had happened to us. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to move forward. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, knowing I had never faced the truth. And so, I sat there. I listened. I didn't interrupt her, even though every part of me wanted to scream. And I realized something then. This wasn't about me getting revenge. This wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about getting the truth, whatever it was, and finding some way to move on. We talked for what felt like hours, and the more she spoke, the more I realized that I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when I knew it wasn't. I had to do something. I had to make a decision, even though I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I told her that I needed some time away, that we needed space to figure things out. It wasn't a decision I came to lightly, but it was the only thing I could think of. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. I wasn't sure if we could fix this, if we could move forward. But I knew I couldn't stay in the same house with her and pretend that everything was okay. Linda didn't fight me on it. She didn't beg me to stay. She just looked at me with those sad eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the guilt there. She knew what she had done. She knew she had broken something that might never be repaired. "I understand," she said quietly, her voice cracking. Take all the time you need. I'll give you the space you want. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm so sorry. And with that, I left. I walked out of the house, not knowing what I was going to do next, but knowing I couldn't stay. Not yet. Not when I was so lost in the pain of it all. After that night, things got quieter between us. The house felt different, almost foreign. Linda and I moved through the days like strangers. She kept her distance, and so did I. It wasn't like before, when we would sit on the porch in the evenings, talking about nothing and everything. There was no comfort in the silence anymore, just tension. Thick, suffocating tension. I stayed in the guest room for a few nights, trying to give us both space, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was a constant reminder of what had happened. Every time I walked past the kitchen, I saw the empty chair where Linda used to sit. Every time I went out into the yard, I remembered the mornings we spent together, working side by side. It felt like a lifetime ago. I couldn't run from it. I knew I had to face it, but every part of me dreaded the moment when we would finally have to talk again. I kept telling myself to wait, that we needed time to cool down, but I knew it wasn't going to get better until we faced the truth head on. So, when Linda finally spoke to me a few days later, I knew it was time. She called me into the living room, her face pale. I could see the strain in her eyes, the same strain I was carrying. But there was something different about her this time. There was no pleading, no attempts to explain herself away, just a quiet acceptance of the mess we were in. I knew then that whatever happened next, it was going to change everything. We need to talk, she said softly, her voice steady. It wasn't a question, but a statement, and in that moment, I knew the storm I had been avoiding was finally here. I don't know what I expected from that conversation, but I wasn't ready for what happened next. Linda sat down across from me, her hands wringing together in her lap, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. There was so much unsaid between us, so many things I wanted to ask, but I held back. I wasn't sure how to start. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to hear. Finally, she spoke, but what she said didn't make any sense. She tried to deny everything. She told me that I was wrong, that I had misunderstood the situation. She said the man she had been seeing was just a friend, someone from her past who had come back into her life. She tried to convince me that it wasn't anything serious, that it was just a few innocent meetings, nothing more. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to take her at her word. But every part of me knew she was lying. I could see it in her eyes. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. I knew she wasn't being honest with me, but I didn't say anything. I just listened, trying to piece together what was real and what wasn't. I wasn't sure if she was lying to protect herself or to protect me from the truth. Either way, it didn't matter. It wasn't the truth. I don't know what to believe anymore, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was too numb, too confused. But I could feel the hurt building inside me. I was trying to hold it back, trying to make sense of what she was telling me. But I knew deep down that she was still hiding something, and that made everything worse. It wasn't until later that night, when we were sitting in silence again, that the truth finally came out. I don't know what changed, but something in Linda shifted. Maybe it was the weight of my silence. Maybe it was the look in my eyes, the way I wasn't backing down anymore. But this time, she didn't deny it. She broke down, quietly at first, then in great sobs that racked her entire body. The woman who had been so controlled, so calm, was now a mess of guilt and regret. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't just sorry for what had happened. She was sorry for betraying me, for betraying us. She told me everything about the man she had been seeing, someone she had met years ago, before we even got married. She told me that their connection had always lingered, like a shadow in the back of her mind. And when I started to change, when I started pulling away, she let herself get lost in it. She found comfort in him, comfort she hadn't realized she was missing. I listened to her tell me about their late-night conversations, their secret meetings. She told me how they had spent time together, how they laughed and talked about old memories, how she felt seen by him in a way she hadn't in years. And with every word she spoke, I felt the ground beneath me crumble. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even look at her. The betrayal stung more than I could have ever prepared for. She had given herself to another man, emotionally, if not physically, and that was worse than I could ever have imagined. I don't know how long we sat there. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But what I do know is that I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I didn't trust myself not to yell, not to say something that would tear us both apart even further. I was furious. Furious at her. Furious at myself. Furious that I had spent all these years thinking everything was fine, only to find out that everything I believed was a lie. But despite the anger, there was something else, something colder. It was this deep, bitter realization that I had been living in a fantasy. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew, had been living a secret life, and that truth was far harder to swallow than the anger. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw things or scream. I just sat there. I sat there as her sobs filled the room, and I let myself feel everything. Every bit of pain, every ounce of betrayal. I let it wash over me because, for the first time in my life, I knew what it was like to be completely powerless. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't change it. All I could do was sit there and let the reality settle in. Eventually, she quieted down, but I still didn't speak. I couldn't. I didn't know what to say. What do you say when the person you thought you knew is no longer who you thought they were? What do you say when the foundation of your entire life has cracked open beneath you? As the night dragged on, I knew I couldn't keep living this way. The silence between us was unbearable. I knew we couldn't go back to what we had, not after everything that had happened. But I didn't know if I was ready to give up on us entirely. I wasn't sure if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living in limbo. I need space, I told her, my voice barely a whisper. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but it was the only thing I could think of. I needed time. Time to process everything she had told me. Time to figure out if I could even stand to be in the same room with her again, let alone live the rest of my life with her. I don't know what she expected me to say. Maybe she expected me to scream at her, to throw her out. Maybe she expected me to forgive her immediately. But I didn't. I just needed time. And maybe that time would heal us, or maybe it would pull us further apart. I didn't know, but I knew I had to try. I had to find out if we could fix this, if it was worth fixing. Linda didn't fight me on it. She didn't beg me to stay. She just looked at me, her eyes filled with sorrow and shame. And I saw in that moment how broken she was. I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her, but I saw how much she regretted what she had done. And that was the hardest thing to face. The days after that night felt like they lasted forever. The house was filled with a kind of silence that made my skin crawl. We didn't speak much. Linda stayed in her room, and I kept to the guest room, trying to escape the heaviness of everything. It wasn't like before, when we could sit together and have a quiet evening, or share a laugh over dinner. Now, even being in the same room felt like a betrayal. Every morning, I would wake up, go through the motions of getting dressed, having breakfast, and then go for my walk. I needed the time alone, away from the house, away from Linda. But no matter how far I walked or how hard I tried to push the thoughts from my mind, the truth kept coming back to me. It was like a weight I couldn't shake off. I didn't know how to be around her anymore. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was everything that came with it. The years we had spent together, the trust we had built, all of it felt like it had been shattered in an instant. I didn't know how to look at her the same way, and I sure didn't know how to talk to her. The silence was crushing, but it was the only thing I could hold on to. I couldn't find the right words to say. I couldn't find the strength to confront her again. I wasn't ready to face the truth any more than I already had. So, I stayed silent. I thought maybe the silence would give us both the space we needed. But it only made things worse. It only deepened the distance between us. Even though we were both under the same roof, it felt like we were oceans apart. The routine that had once comforted us now seemed foreign. Every time I passed Linda in the hall, I could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just the things left unsaid. It was the way we moved around each other, like we were both walking on eggshells. At dinner, we'd sit across from each other, barely exchanging words. It was like the same meal we'd shared for years, but now it felt awkward, almost forced. Every bite of food, every clink of the utensils, felt louder than usual. And every time I looked at her, I couldn't escape the question, how did we get here? There were moments when I thought maybe I could try to talk to her. Maybe we could work through this. But every time I thought about confronting her again, I realized something. I wasn't sure I could handle the answers. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear everything she had to say. So I stayed quiet. I stayed in my own world, and she stayed in hers, and the silence grew thicker. It wasn't just the betrayal that ate at me. It was the guilt. I kept asking myself, what did I miss? How did I not see this coming? I was supposed to be the man who protected my family, who kept things together. But I couldn't even see what was happening right under my nose. That gnawing guilt started to eat away at me. I felt like a fool. I had trusted Linda completely, and now that trust was in pieces. But even worse than the guilt was the anger. The anger at myself for being blind, the anger at her for doing this to us, and the anger at life for throwing this all at me when I thought I had earned peace. We'd been together for 42 years, 42 years of hard work, raising kids, building a life, and now it felt like it had all been meaningless. I couldn't tell anyone about it. How could I? Who would understand? Most of my friends had already been through their own struggles. They had their own issues. Who was I to burden them with my pain? And besides, it felt like admitting it to someone else would make it even more real. So I kept it all inside. I let the anger simmer beneath the surface. Every time I looked at Linda, I felt it, the heat rising in my chest. But I didn't act on it. I didn't yell or scream. I kept it in, afraid of what might happen if I let it out. But that anger was a constant companion. It was like a fire burning in the back of my mind. And every time I thought I could let it go, it flared up again. I was trapped between my own guilt and my anger, and I didn't know how to break free from it. I couldn't just sit with the anger forever. I needed answers. I had to understand why this happened, why she did it, why she chose him. But every time I tried to talk to her, the conversation always turned back to the same place we had left it days before. She'd tell me that she was sorry, that she never meant for it to happen, but there was no real explanation. She said she had lost herself, that she needed something she didn't even know she was missing. But it didn't make sense to me. I spent days thinking about it, trying to piece it all together. I thought maybe, if I understood her side, if I understood why she made the choices she did, I could move forward. I could find a way to forgive her. But every time I tried to talk to her, I just felt more confused. She told me the same things over and over. She loved me, but she had lost herself. She needed something more, but she didn't know what it was until she found it with him. I kept wondering, what did I miss? What did I do wrong? But the more I asked myself those questions, the more frustrated I became. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. The answers didn't make sense. They didn't fit together. And the more I pushed for answers, the further away she seemed. Eventually, I realized something. There were no easy answers. There was no neat explanation for what had happened. She had made choices, and I had been blind to them. I had been too focused on everything else to see what was happening between us. And now, all I had was the broken pieces and the painful truth that we might never understand each other again. After everything, after all the hurt and the confusion, I realized I needed to make a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in the anger and the pain. I couldn't stay in the same house, pretending things would go back to normal. But I also wasn't ready to let go of everything we had built. I wasn't ready to throw away 42 years of marriage. So I made the decision to separate. It wasn't something I wanted. It wasn't something I planned. But it was the only way I could think of to start healing. We needed space, time to think, time to figure out what we wanted, whether it was together or apart. I told Linda that I needed time away from her. She didn't argue. She didn't beg me to stay. She just nodded, her face pale and drawn, and I saw the weight of her guilt in her eyes. She knew I couldn't stay, not like this, but she also knew that I wasn't ready to give up on us completely. I packed a few things and left the house that night. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew I couldn't stay in that house, surrounded by the memories of everything that had gone wrong. I needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever forgive myself. As I drove away, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. The years, the trust, the betrayal, all of it was with me, in that car, as I drove into the night, not knowing where I was headed, but knowing that I couldn't go back. The first few weeks after I left the house were the hardest I've ever been through. I didn't know what to do with myself. There were times when I just sat in my car, staring at the road ahead, not sure where to go. It felt like everything I had built my life around had been ripped away, and I was standing in the rubble of it all. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to do with the empty house or the empty feeling inside me. But the one thing I knew was that I needed space. I needed time to figure out what came next. It wasn't just about Linda anymore. It was about me, about finding who I was, without the weight of this betrayal hanging over me. I spent a lot of time in my old workshop, fixing things that didn't need fixing. It was like I needed to stay busy, to keep my hands moving, just so I wouldn't have to think. But every time I stopped, every time I sat still for a minute, the thoughts would come rushing back. The betrayal, the hurt, the confusion, they were always there, lurking in the back of my mind. But there were moments of peace too. Little moments when I wasn't consumed by the anger or the pain. When I would go for a walk in the woods behind the house or sit by the river, just listening to the water flow. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that I was still here. I was still alive. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. The hardest part was the loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from not knowing where you fit anymore. I didn't know if I was still a husband, still part of a family. I didn't know who I was supposed to be in this new reality. After a while, I started to get used to the solitude. It wasn't easy, but I started finding my rhythm again. I took up old hobbies I hadn't touched in years: woodworking, gardening, even reading. It felt like I was rediscovering parts of myself that I had buried under years of marriage, years of routine. I spent weekends visiting old friends, ones I hadn't seen in a long time. We'd sit around, talk about the old days, laugh at things we used to do. It was comforting in a way. They didn't ask me about Linda. They didn't push me to talk about the separation. They just let me be, and that helped more than I could have imagined. For the first time in a long while, I started to feel like I was more than just a husband, more than just a father. I was Frank again, just Frank. And that felt good. It was like I had found a part of myself that had been lost for years, buried under the weight of everything else. There were still hard days, days when the loneliness would come crashing back, when I'd look at the empty bed and remember the life we used to have. But those days were fewer now. I was learning to stand on my own, to take care of myself, to find happiness in my own company. I started taking long walks in the mornings, just me in the open air. I'd go out to the garden, pull weeds, plant new flowers. Simple things, but they were enough. They gave me a sense of purpose, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was beginning to heal. It was a month before Linda reached out to me. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I didn't know what to expect. But when the phone rang, my heart skipped a beat. I had no idea what she was going to say. Was she going to beg me to come back? Was she going to tell me it had all been a mistake? I didn't answer the phone at first. I let it ring, just sitting there, staring at the wall. But then something in me told me I needed to pick it up. Maybe it was time to hear her out. Maybe it was time to face whatever was coming next. When I finally picked up, she was quiet at first. Her voice was thin, almost as if she was afraid I might hang up on her. But then she spoke, and her words hit me harder than I expected. "I'm sorry, Frank," she said. "I know I've hurt you. I can't take back what I did, but I need you to know how much I regret it. I don't know what happened. I was lost, and I made a terrible mistake." I didn't say anything at first. I just listened. I didn't know how to respond. I had spent so much time trying to push her out of my mind, trying to forget the hurt. But hearing her voice again, hearing her remorse, stirred up feelings I wasn't ready to deal with. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Linda," I finally said, my voice rough. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her crying, quietly, but I didn't know what to say. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said softly. I don't even expect you to want me back. But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. That was the first time I felt like we were speaking the same language. The apology didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the betrayal. But it was the first step. And I wasn't sure if it would be enough. But it was something. The hardest thing I faced in those weeks wasn't the pain of the betrayal. It was the struggle to trust again. How do you go back to someone who has broken you? How do you rebuild something that's been shattered? I didn't have answers. All I knew was that I was angry, I was hurt, and I didn't know how to fix any of it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The nights I spent alone, the long hours I spent reflecting on what Linda had done. And the hardest part? Realizing that the trust we had built over the years had disappeared in the blink of an eye. It wasn't just her actions. It was the realization that I had been blind to the signs. I had trusted her without question. And now, I had to live with the fact that I didn't even see the cracks in our foundation. I thought about what it would take to rebuild that trust. Could I ever trust her again? Could I ever trust anyone again? And for the first time in my life, I didn't have the answers. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know how to fix this. But even though the trust was gone, something else began to happen. I started to realize that I could trust myself. I could trust my instincts. And I could trust that, no matter what, I would be okay. That was the first step toward healing. Not trusting her, but trusting myself to handle whatever came next. The days turned into weeks, and I started to see a shift. Not in Linda, not yet, but in me. I was learning to stand on my own again, to rebuild my life piece by piece. I didn't know if Linda and I could ever go back to what we had, but I was starting to think, maybe I didn't need to. Maybe it was time to start a new chapter. I began to imagine a life without the constant weight of betrayal hanging over me. A life where I wasn't defined by what happened, but by who I was, by what I could become. I didn't know what the future held, but I wasn't going to let the past dictate it. Linda and I started talking again, but it wasn't like before. It was slow, measured, careful. I wasn't sure what I wanted from her, but I knew I needed to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. We agreed to see a counselor together, not because we thought we could fix everything, but because we wanted to understand what went wrong. We both knew it was going to be a long road. I wasn't sure if we would ever be the same, but maybe that was okay. Maybe we didn't have to be the same. Maybe we just needed to find a way to move forward in our own way, in our own time. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to face it. I was ready to see where it would take me. It had been 2 months since the separation. 2 months of silence, of distance, of quiet reflection. I had spent that time alone, away from Linda, trying to figure out where my life had gone off course. The house felt less empty now, more like a place that was waiting for something to happen. I wasn't sure what. I wasn't sure if I was waiting for Linda to come back or for the courage to finally let go of everything. I thought a lot about the life we had built together, the years we spent raising kids, the quiet moments in the garden, the laughter that once filled the house. I could still hear her voice in my head, still feel the warmth of her hand in mine. But I also couldn't forget the betrayal, the pain, the way I had been blindsided by everything I thought I knew about her. I couldn't pretend that the love we shared hadn't been broken. Not anymore. In the stillness of those weeks, I realized something. I couldn't keep looking back. I couldn't live in the past, no matter how much I wanted to. I had to move forward. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to start thinking about it. Not as Linda's husband, not as a man with a family to protect, but as just Frank. The man I used to be, the man I was becoming. And in the quiet of those moments, I started to see the possibilities. The life I thought I had lost wasn't gone forever. Maybe it wasn't the life I thought I'd have, but I could still create something new. Something that was mine, something that could heal me. The decision wasn't easy, it wasn't clear, but it was the only one I could make. I had to stop asking myself what I had lost and start thinking about what I could gain. I started going to therapy. It wasn't something I'd ever considered before, but I knew I needed help. I couldn't keep carrying this burden alone. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed someone to help me work through the anger, the guilt, and the pain. Someone to show me how to let go of all the emotions that were eating away at me. Therapy wasn't easy. It forced me to face things I didn't want to face. It made me confront my own role in the breakdown of our marriage. I wasn't blameless. I wasn't perfect. There were times when I could have done more, when I could have been more present, more attentive. But the pain was too great, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel it, to acknowledge it. The first few sessions were tough. I didn't know how to open up, how to talk about the things that had been buried inside me for so long. But little by little, it started to get easier. I started to understand myself better, to see the patterns in my own behavior. And for the first time in months, I started to feel like I was healing. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew I was on the right path. I had taken the first step toward healing, and that was more than I had thought I could do. I was learning how to live again, how to be me again. A few weeks into my therapy, Linda reached out to me again. This time, it wasn't a phone call or a text message. She showed up at the door, standing there with that same apologetic look on her face. She didn't look the same as she had before. There was something different about her now, a vulnerability, a rawness that hadn't been there before. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I wasn't sure what to say. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see her again, to hear her try to explain everything. But something in her eyes told me she was different. She wasn't the same woman who had betrayed me. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the same man who had been hurt. I let her in. We sat down in the living room, and for a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, but eventually, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been to therapy too," she said, her eyes looking down. "I've been working through my own issues, my own mistakes. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry, Frank. I can't undo what I did, but I want to be better. I want to make things right if you'll let me." Her words hit me like a freight train. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to run, wanted to scream at her for everything she had done. But part of me, the part that had loved her for so many years, wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that she had changed, that she had truly realized the damage she had caused. I didn't have an answer for her, not yet. But for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward for us. Maybe there was a chance for us to rebuild. But I couldn't make that decision yet, not when I was still figuring out who I was. The hardest part of the whole ordeal wasn't the betrayal itself. It wasn't even the hurt I had felt. It was the trust. How do you rebuild trust when it's been broken so badly? How do you look at the person you've spent your life with and believe in them again? I couldn't answer that. Not yet. Every time I looked at Linda, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she had changed, that she was truly sorry. But the pain was still fresh. The memories of what happened were still there, haunting me. I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I spent a lot of time talking about it in therapy. Trust wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. It wasn't something that could be rebuilt with just a few apologies or a few heartfelt conversations. It was something that had to be earned over time. And right now, I wasn't sure Linda could earn it. But I also realized something important. I couldn't hold on to the anger forever. I couldn't let the betrayal define me. I couldn't let it control me. The only way I was going to move forward, the only way I was going to heal, was if I started letting go of the past. If I started trusting myself, even if I couldn't trust her yet. And so, I began the long process of forgiving, not for her sake, but for mine. I didn't know what would happen between us, but I knew I had to start healing, even if it was just one small step at a time. As time went on, I began to imagine a future without the pain, without the betrayal. I didn't know if Linda and I could ever be the same. But I also realized that I didn't need to go back to what we had. What I needed was to move forward, whether with her or without her. The choice was mine. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I had to stop looking backward. I had to stop asking myself why it happened and start asking myself what I wanted for the rest of my life. I couldn't keep living in the past, in the pain, in the anger. I had to find a way to live in the present, to build something new. I started to see Linda not just as the woman who had betrayed me, but as a person who had her own struggles, her own flaws. And for the first time, I started to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe we could rebuild. Maybe we couldn't. But either way, I knew that I was ready to find peace, whether it was with her or on my own. We agreed to keep seeing a counselor, not because we thought we could fix everything, but because we both wanted to understand where we had gone wrong. It wasn't about fixing the past. It was about moving forward. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was ready to face it. I was ready to start again. It's been a few months since Linda and I first started talking again. We've both been going to therapy, trying to work through our issues. But despite everything, the betrayal still lingers like a shadow over us. I don't think it will ever go away completely. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's part of the process of healing. I've learned something important during this time. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't stop because you've been hurt. It keeps moving. And you either move with it, or you get left behind. And as hard as it is, I've started to realize that I can't keep living in the past. I can't keep letting the betrayal define me. I have to move on for my own sake. It's not easy, though. Every time I think I'm ready to move forward, something happens. A memory hits me out of nowhere, or I hear Linda's voice in the other room, and the weight of everything comes rushing back. But I'm learning to live with it. I'm learning that it doesn't have to control me anymore. I've started going out more, spending time with friends, taking up hobbies I had long forgotten about. It's not the same as it was before, but it's a start. It's a step in the right direction. I've realized that I can't keep waiting for things to go back to the way they were. They won't. And that's okay. The truth is, I'm not sure where my future will take me. I don't know if Linda and I can ever be the same. But I do know this. I'm learning to be okay with that I'm learning that it's okay to let go. It's okay to find a new path, even if it's different from the one I thought I'd walk down. As I've spent more time alone, I've started rediscovering parts of myself I had long forgotten. It's strange, really. For so many years, I was defined by my role as a husband, as a father. My life was wrapped up in Linda and the kids, and I had no idea who I was outside of that. But now, for the first time in a long time, I've started to remember who I was before all of this, the man I used to be. I've picked up old hobbies that I set aside years ago: woodworking, reading, even hiking. Simple things that bring me joy. And for the first time in a long time, I feel a sense of purpose again. It's not the same as it was before, but it's enough. Enough to remind me that I'm still here, still capable of finding joy in life, even after all the pain. I've also been spending more time with friends, people I haven't seen in years. We talk about the past, about the things we used to do. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like I'm starting to rebuild, piece by piece. I'm starting to find myself again, and that's a relief. I've even started going out to new places, meeting new people. It's not that I'm looking for anything. I'm not trying to replace what I had with Linda. I'm just learning to live again, to rediscover parts of me that I had lost along the way. It's a slow process, but it's a process that's bringing me peace. I know I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm getting there, and I'm starting to feel like I can handle whatever comes next. Linda and I are still talking, not every day, but we've started communicating again. It's different now, though. The dynamic has changed. We've both been through too much to pretend like everything is fine, but at the same time, we're both trying to figure out what comes next, whether that's together or apart. We've had honest conversations, something we never had before. We talk about what went wrong, what we both need from each other, and what we want for the future. It's painful sometimes to revisit everything we've been through, but it's necessary. We can't move forward unless we understand what happened. I don't know if we'll ever go back to what we had. I don't think we can, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we can build something new, something stronger, something built on honesty and trust. Or maybe we won't. Maybe we'll decide that it's time to let go for good. I'm not sure what will happen between us, and I'm not in a rush to find out. I'm still focused on rebuilding my own life, on finding peace within myself. If Linda and I can figure out how to be together again, great. If not, I'll be okay. I've learned that I don't need her to define me. I don't need anyone to define me. I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I'm learning to do that every day. Maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe we won't. But for now, I'm focused on the journey ahead. The journey of healing, of self-discovery, of moving on. Whatever that looks like. I'm not scared of the future anymore. I'm ready to face it, whatever it holds. One of the things I've been working on, not just in therapy but in my own life, is setting boundaries. I never really thought about boundaries before. In my marriage, I thought that everything was about compromise, about making sure the other person was happy. But what I didn't realize was that, in doing that, I lost myself. I gave too much, and I didn't protect my own needs. I didn't set boundaries to protect my own heart. Now, I'm learning how to set those boundaries, how to protect myself while still being open to others. It's not easy. It's hard to say no to the people you care about, especially when it feels like you've spent your whole life saying yes. But I'm learning that boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about showing respect for yourself and for the other person. With Linda, it's been a slow process. We've had to renegotiate our relationship. It's not the same as it was before, and I don't think it ever will be. But we're finding new ways to communicate, new ways to respect each other's needs, and that's something I never really thought we'd have. It's not perfect, but it's progress. I'm also learning to respect my own needs, to take care of myself before I try to take care of anyone else. I've spent so much of my life trying to please others, trying to make everyone else happy, that I forgot to make sure I was okay. I'm learning to put myself first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that allows me to be a better person for everyone else. It's a work in progress, but I'm starting to understand the importance of boundaries in every part of my life. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm taking control of my own destiny. Linda and I are at a crossroads. We've been talking more, but I'm not sure if we're moving toward a new relationship or if we're simply moving apart. The truth is, I don't know if we can make it work. I don't know if we can rebuild the trust, the connection we once had. But I also know that I can't keep living in limbo. I can't keep waiting for something to happen. So I've made a decision. Not for Linda, not for anyone else, but for me. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to focus on my own life, on my own healing, and whatever happens with Linda will happen. I can't force it. I can't control it, but I can control my own future. I'm not closing the door on us. I'm not saying we're done forever, but I'm not waiting around for something to happen that may never come. I'm not going to keep living in the past, in the pain of what we had. I'm going to live for today, for me. And if we can find a way to be together again, great. If not, I'll be okay. I'll still be me. The future isn't set in stone. It never has been. But I'm ready to face it. I'm ready to see where life takes me. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of what comes next. Looking back on everything, it's hard to believe how much has changed. The man I was, when I first found out about Linda's betrayal, is not the same man who sits here today, writing all of this down. I've learned a lot about myself, about relationships, and about what it takes to heal. But it's not just about what I've learned. It's about what I've realized I need to let go of. I've learned that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's not about giving someone else a pass for their mistakes. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of anger and resentment. I'm not saying I've forgiven Linda yet. I'm not sure I ever will. But I know I can't carry the anger anymore. It's too heavy. It's like carrying a boulder around with you all the time, and I've realized that I'm tired of carrying it. I've also learned that healing doesn't happen overnight. It's not a straight path. There are ups and downs, good days and bad days. Some days, I feel like I've made great progress. Other days, the pain feels fresh again. But that's part of it. That's part of the process. I'm learning to be patient with myself, to give myself the time I need to heal, without rushing it. And I've learned that, despite everything, I'm still capable of love. I'm still capable of opening my heart again. Maybe not to Linda, maybe not to anyone just yet, but I'm learning to love myself, to trust myself again. And that's the first step. What happened to me, to us, will always be part of my story. It's something I'll carry with me. But I don't have to let it define me. I don't have to let it control the rest of my life. The lessons I've learned are mine, and they're what will carry me forward. Forgiveness has always been a tricky subject for me. I've always thought of it as something you do for the other person. You forgive them, and you move on. But I've come to realize that forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me. It's about freeing myself from the chains of anger and resentment that have kept me tied to the past. It's about taking control of my life again. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to forgive Linda. Not yet. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing the pain she caused me. It means I'm no longer going to let that pain control my life. I'm no longer going to let it keep me stuck in the past. I'm going to let go of the anger, even if I can't let go of the hurt just yet. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. Every day, I have to remind myself that forgiveness isn't about her. It's about me. It's about finding peace within myself, even if that means accepting the truth of what happened without letting it destroy me. Maybe one day, I'll be able to forgive her. Maybe one day, I'll be able to look at Linda without the bitterness that I carry now. But I'm not forcing it. I'm letting it happen in its own time. And in the meantime, I'm learning to forgive myself for the things I did, for the mistakes I made, for the ways I hurt myself by holding on too tightly to the past. Forgiveness doesn't come with a timeline. It doesn't come with rules or conditions. It's a journey, just like everything else. And I'm learning to take that journey one step at a time. I've been thinking a lot about what moving forward means. What it means for me. What it means for Linda. What it means for my future. The thing is, I don't know what it looks like yet. I don't know if Linda and I can ever go back to what we had. I don't know if we can ever fix what's been broken. But I do know this. I can't stay where I am. I can't stay stuck in the past. For the first time in a long time, I'm allowing myself to think about the future. I'm allowing myself to dream again, even if those dreams don't include Linda, even if they don't include anyone at all. I'm thinking about what I want for the rest of my life, and I'm realizing that I have the power to make that happen. I've started setting new goals for myself, things I never would have thought about before. Maybe it's traveling. Maybe it's taking up a new hobby. Maybe it's just learning how to be by myself again. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not afraid of it anymore. I'm ready to face it. I'm ready to move forward. And if Linda and I can find a way to rebuild, if we can find a way to move past this, then great. But if not, I'm okay with that too. I'm not relying on her to define my happiness anymore. I'm not relying on anyone to give me permission to live my life. I'm taking control, and I'm moving forward no matter what. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It just means I'm choosing to live my life with the lessons I've learned, with the strength I've gained, and with the hope that there's still a good life ahead of me. And that's enough for me. Maybe Linda and I will find a way to make it work. Maybe we won't. But either way, I've come to terms with the fact that I don't need her to complete me. I don't need her to fix the parts of me that have been broken. I've learned how to stand on my own 2 feet again, and that, in itself, feels like a new beginning. There's a part of me that still loves Linda, that still wants the life we had, but there's also a part of me that knows I can't keep holding on to something that isn't there anymore. The person she was, the person I thought I knew, she's gone, and I can't keep trying to resurrect that person. Maybe the new beginning isn't with Linda at all. Maybe it's with me. Maybe it's about becoming the man I was meant to be, the man I lost along the way. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm not afraid to find out. I've stopped looking back, I've stopped waiting for something to change, for some magic moment that will make everything right again. Instead, I'm looking forward, taking each day as it comes, and trusting that the path I'm on is the one I'm supposed to be on. Whatever happens, I know I'll be okay. I'll be okay because I've learned that I am enough, just as I am. And that's the most important lesson I could have learned. And so, here I am, standing at the crossroads. I don't know which path I'll take, but I know I'm ready to take the first step. I don't know if Linda and I will find a way to rebuild, but I do know that I can't keep living in the past. I can't keep waiting for something to change that might never come. I'm not saying I'm giving up on her. I'm not saying I'm closing the door on us. But I'm not waiting around for a miracle either. I'm not going to keep holding on to something that isn't real. I'm going to live my life, whether that's with her or without her. And I'm going to be okay with that. The truth is, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what's coming. But I know that I'm ready for whatever it is. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to start this new chapter on my own terms, with no regrets and no looking back. And that's the best decision I could have made.